Yusuf bhai kahan hai? Yusuf bhai, do you have enough water bottles for everyone? No, not for that. We're going to use it, tell everyone to drink and go for wudu outside. I don't know if you have that many. Theek, inshallah. So today, inshallah, today's session will be slightly lighter than yesterday. Yesterday was very information heavy, and we covered, I believe, a lot. And we actually rushed a few things. Also want to clarify a few things that I mentioned. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm going to slide over. Yes, and the Satr al-Awra, covering requirements, I believe for most of us it's quite clear as to men how much we have to cover and how much the women have to cover. I emphasized yesterday that we should remember there's a difference between how much a woman needs to cover, whether in her home, whether in public, and how much she has to cover when she is in Salah. And Salah very specifically, unanimously agreed that the face, the hands, and the feet don't need to be covered. Every other part of the body needs to be covered. I also want to emphasize something else. I don't know if you can see it over there. Yes. Yes. Inshallah. Okay, we'll get to that because I'm going to actually ask you a question. You guys are going to summarize, not me. Okay, inshallah. So anyways, just with regard to women's clothing, and this applies to men. Once we understand how much a man and a woman has to cover, we have to understand that not as only does it mean we have to cover the area, but the covering has to be loose enough not to show the shape of the area. That's very, very important. Many a times, whether it's a man or a woman, we wear such fitted pants especially, that our figure shows very, very distinctly, which is against the whole idea. One of the things that Rasulullah ﷺ was shown when he went to Mi'raj, was the different punishments for different sins. Remember, there are many sins, and each one have unique punishments. But yet Nabi ﷺ was not shown every single punishment. But one of the punishments that Nabi ﷺ was shown was a group of people who are burning in an oven, who are being so-called baked in an oven. And when Rasulullah ﷺ asked, what did these people do? Rasulullah ﷺ said that these were the people who covered themselves and yet were naked. Who covered themselves and yet were naked. And so this is a very dangerous aspect. And subhanAllah, when it comes to Salah, it's even more dangerous. Why is it more dangerous? Because by you thinking you're covering yourself, and by yet you are not covering yourself, what is happening? Your Salah is being invalid, and you think everything is going well and good in your life. So the covering of awrah, whether for men or women understand how much they have to cover, and men understand how much they have to cover. A typical example for men, we go play basketball, we have shorts on. Now subhanAllah, some of us have come with this alternative. We'll wear very small shorts, but they wear tights. And so the tights are all the way up to their thighs, so that it's covered, but yet what's happening is a very tight shape tights that a person is wearing. That is not considered the Satr al-Awra. A person cannot pray in those. Why? Because the part that is covered by that tights, despite being covered, Sahal, please, no noise. Okay? Zakat. Okay? Despite being covered, it's actually so-called exposed, and Satr al-Awra is not happening. The second thing I mentioned, and subhanAllah, this might cause some confusion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya Bani Adam, خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِد. O Bani Adam, O children of Adam, take on to beautification whenever you go to the masjid. Or over here, masjid doesn't mean the structure of a masjid, but rather a time or place when you go to fulfill your sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the things we mentioned is beautification, or adornment, or wearing the clothes that you have. However, this is very important to understand. If a woman is in her home, she can wear good clothes and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, if she is exiting the home, then to beautify herself, it is not recommended, nor I would say, it's not permissible for her to adorn herself in a manner where she is attractive to the opposite gender outside the home. She should come as simply as possible. Or even if she's wearing something inside, then she should have a gown covering everything from the outside, concealing all that adornment and beautification that she has inside. Whenever the ladies come outside, they should ensure to cover that beautification and adornment. So that's one point that might have been caused some misunderstanding. One brother asked for some summary. So I said, I'm not going to summarize. I'm going to let everyone else summarize it. So you guys can get a quick glimpse, and then I'm going to turn it over, inshallah. So who can tell me? We did 7 things that we need to have to ensure what are known as shurut. That means conditions before salah. Listen, let's go. What is the first one? No. We want one word. That's why we summarize slightly different. What was the word we used? The Arabic word. Tahara. What was it? Tahara. Understand? So, number 2. What was the second one? Admun najasa. You guys got it. Easy one on this one. Okay, now next one. It's not there anymore. The second one was admun najasa. What was the definition of admun najasa? That any kind of impurity that is existent on the body needs to be removed. We're going to go into a little bit more detail about that today, inshallah. Okay? But nevertheless, now, what was the third one? We have tahara, which means like ghusl, wudu, etc. You have admun najasa, you removed all impurities from your body. What was the third thing? Place was part of tahara. Listen, tahara was, whether it was removing najasa, everything. There's one more, I want in sequence. Let's try to deconstruct sequence, but he's right. Time is one of them, okay? But anyways, look, I look at it like this. Once everything is clean, I need to ensure that everything is covered. So, satrul awra. Everyone say it? Satrul awra, right? So again, tahara, say it. Admun najasa, okay? And then, satrul awra. And now we have to see if it is time. If it's time, so that means waqt. Listen. And yesterday I mentioned that we need to have yaqeen. That means we need to believe it's time. Do you guys understand? Listen. Conviction of time, not only time. Why? Because if I think it's salah time, I might be wrong. I didn't really verify. Just go and pray. Does it count? No. Listen. I need to have conviction that it is time for salah, right? Number 5. Once you have the time, what do we need to look for? Istiqbalul qibla. Qibla, you have to look for the qibla. And then niyyah. What was it? Niyyah. Intention. Okay? And last but not least, takbir tahrima. And yesterday I mentioned that what is our reasoning for keeping the tahrima as the external of salah. Once you say the tahrima, then the salah has started. Now, one thing I want to jump to today, inshallah, before we continue, is a little bit more on that admun najasa. Okay, types of filth and purification in Islamic law, right? Yesterday we talked very, very briefly. I ran through the different types of filth that a person may have on their body. Now a person may ask, well, what kind of filth is regarded as, what do you call heavy filth, and what is regarded as a light filth? Listen. Now heavy filth, we mentioned that for a person to become clean from heavy filth, listen, a person cannot have any more than an amount of a $50 coin. Any more amount of a $50 coin. Listen. And for a person to be free from any light filth, a person cannot have any more than a quarter of a limb. A quarter of a limb, right? Okay. So now, heavy filth is any kind of human excretions. And we talked, and stool, urine, etc. All that emanates from the private parts. The reason I keep that a separate one, because many times when a person has a wet dream, don't happens, and he emanates and says certain things. Or a person is intimate, but does not do the deed with his partner, with his spouse, then certain types of fluids emanate from there, right? And there are also certain types of fluids that emanate from a person's front private part, which is known as wadi, which comes due to different sicknesses, etc. And for women, they have other issues as well. Now, as long as it emanates from the internal part of the front private part, again, once it emanates from the internal part of the front private part, it will be a cause for wudu needing to be repeated. Yes? Now, for women specifically, listen, they have different types of excretions, or what do you call it? what's the correct word? Discharges. Jazakallah khair. Discharges. So, and they understand their discharges more than we do. But if they are convicted that the discharge is from the external part of the private part, then that will not cause their wudu to break. However, if they know it's from the internal part, or number two, they are unsure, then we'll regard the wudu to have been, to need to be, repeated. Oh no. Okay. Number three is flowing blood. Flowing blood needs a little bit more detail, but most of it, the safest is if any person has any kind of blood coming out, what do you need to do? Just do wudu again. But flowing blood, let's say a person gets scraped, and this is usually the time happens, you will see droplets of blood appearing on top of that scrape. But they're not moving. They're just kind of like droplets of blood in place, and they dry up and they remain as droplets. In that case, you do not have to repeat your wudu. Even though safest would be what? Just repeat your wudu. But it's permissible not to repeat your wudu if you're in dire circumstances, right? However, if the blood flows from its place, moves from its place, even the slightest, whether by itself or whether by your doing. Now, your doing is it flows out and then you see another droplet of blood coming in. But if you wipe it once and it's gone, nothing comes out after that, you do not need to repeat your wudu. Are you guys with me? Why? Because the only time you can verify something is flowing is if you remove it, and what happens? More blood comes. That's how you know it's flowing. Otherwise, it is just a blood that's found within every person's flesh, which is not regarded as impure. Feces of land animals. Over here it says land animals. Sorry, I'll have to change that later on. Feces of land animals. Yes, that's correct. Whether it is, omnivorous, herbivorous, or carnivorous animals, all their feces are all regarded as heavy filth. Wine and intoxicants are regarded as heavy filth. Now, on the other side, urine of halal animals. Urine of halal animals is actually light filth. Urine of halal animals is light filth. So, even if a large amount of it gets on your body, as long as less than one part of the limb, is good to go. Horse urine. Why is horse urine uniquely mentioned over here? Because there's a whole difference of opinion within the Hanafi school of thought, whether horses are consumable or not. So that's a different discussion on its own. Droppings of predatory birds. Droppings of what? Predatory birds. However, and droppings of non-predatory bird. For example, a pigeon. Pigeon is not a predatory bird. If it falls on you, it is not impure. It is what? It is not impure. What does that mean? Do you have to wash it? No, you don't have to wash it. You can pigeons, what others? Hummingbirds, all these things. Crow is a what? A predatory bird. So if a crow drops on you, then do you have to wash it? Yes, you have to wash it off. The vulture, eagle, if they have droppings on you, do you have to wash it? You have to wash it. No. Yes. Dogs part of predatory animals, right? Land animals, part of land animals. So any excretion coming from dogs, cats, everything. One point about the cats. I mentioned yesterday, I'll repeat it today. Cats, a lot of us have cats. Cats are regarded as tawafina alaykum al-tawafat. That means they are regarded even by Sharia as things that are come and go from the homes. And thus, yes, the excretion from cats are impure, major impurity. That means heavy filth. However, once it has cleansed itself and it comes and sits on you, and some of that litter kind of rubs off on you, that is regarded as forgiven or overlooked in Sharia. Yes. Ababil. I don't know if they're when the ones. Oh no, I don't know. I have to find out. Are ababil predatory animals? I don't know. I'll have to find out what ababil are by, as in English, and what kind of, yes, whether they're predatory animals or not. You guys, someone can in the meantime Google it and see if whether they're predatory animals or not. Okay. Purification methods. Whether it's heavy filth or light filth. Now we're going to look at remember, one is heavy filth. What is the permitted amount? Less than a $50 coin, right? One is light filth. You have a quarter of a limb, whether it's on the clothing or whether it's on the body itself. Now, when you look at different filth, the effects it has after you have already, after it has dried up, is of two types. Number one is something that has a physical body that can be removed. Other one dries into the clothing or onto the body and you can't really remove it. If it is removable, if it is removed, that means it has a physical body to it, then it has to be removed completely. And if it cannot be, then it has to be washed 3 times. How many times? Washed 3 times. And I want to go into that detail. Even though over here it says 3 times, there's one detail to it that we have to understand. Example of what do you call it? Visible filth. Dried blood, solid matter, you can peel it off, etc. Method: remove body of filth with water. If difficult, remove completely, remaining traces excused. Invisible filth, example, urine after drying. Method: washing and squeezing it 3 times. Washing and squeezing it 3 times. For unsqueezable items, for example, you have a large carpet. You have to wash it once and then hang it, and nowadays you have vacuums, water vacuums. You have to, take out the water to the extent that it doesn't drip anymore. Then you have to wash it again and do the same on 3 times completely. Now, one thing to understand, a person may have a question that, hey, when we wash our clothing in our washing machines, does it always have 3 cycles? Some machines maybe do have 3 cycles. Some of them may have 1 cycle. Some of them have 2 cycles. Understand the whole objective of washing it 3 times is that whatever impurities are there, once they mix in with the water, they're supposed to be squeezed, and all that water and the filth are supposed to be squeezed out. Yes? That is the main objective. And because we as human strength, as strong as you are, when you squeeze it and you hang it after a while, what do you still see? After 5 minutes, you see the water still dripping and water coming out. When you put in the washing machine and you take it out of the washing machine, not on 100% of the time, but about, I can safely say about 90% of the time, even if you hang it, you come back after 10-15 minutes, are you going to see water dripping? No, almost never. So the objective, which was to extract every drop of water, which has a possibility of dripping and staying in the clothing, has been attained. And thus, even if it's if you have a single cycle or dual cycle or 3 cycles, your clothing is pure. One exception to rule. One exception to rule, right? Exception to the rule is if you have clothing and you wash all of them and you pick up a clothing, even after you just finish washing it, and you can very clearly, not if you really closely smell it, but very clearly and distinctly smell the filth that was on there, then that needs to be washed again. And you need a second cycle. Why? Because we'll understand that one of the things that need to be removed is the effects of what? Impurities. What is it? Effects of impurities. And effects of impurities come from smell, taste, and color. So one of the aspects is smell. Is everyone clear? Yes. Yes. So in the dry cleaning, usually the methodology that I researched last time is to put chemicals on it, and they have procedure which extracts all of that with a machine. Understand? So that's completely fine, because the process is the same. That once the chemicals mix in onto the clothing, what does it do? Understand? It pulls out all the impurities with the whatever the liquids are. Yes, water is not necessary, as long any liquid which is used for cleaning purposes is fine. It's good to go. Yes. Jazakallah, good question. Is water necessary for all cleaning purposes? No. Any liquid that is possible to use for cleaning may be used for cleaning purposes, as long as it removes the filth from that clothing or area. Yes. It doesn't flow? Okay, so if it doesn't flow, then it needs to flow. Yes, whatever amount of chemicals used. Now, so this is something new to me. If the amount of liquid being used does not flow, then that would be problematic, and that item would need to be washed in a better manner if it's impure. So, or more cleaning agents an agent needs to be used. Now, when fill does not transfer. Now, this is usually the examples given here may not be as realistic, but I'll give you a typical example. When you have kids at home, and sometimes kids are running around, they urinate on the floor, or sometimes their diaper seeps through, right? And so it's all over the place. I'm trying to pray. He sat on the janamas, and he sat on the sofa. Do those areas need to be cleansed, purified, etc.? That's a question, right? So now, wrapped garments. Wrapped garments, typical example nowadays is you have a clothing which has impurity in it, and you have another clothing which doesn't have impurity in it. One is wet and one is dry. So after they are together in the sun for whatever amount of time, if you remove one and you can clearly see the wetness and the smell on the clean garment, what does that mean? That also has now become impure. Why? Because the effects have transferred from the impure to the pure. Sleeping on top of impure garments. A typical example of it is someone had a wet dream, and he took a shower, those clothes dried up, or maybe he had yesterday's pajamas. He wore yesterday's pajamas and went to sleep. If he wakes up and he can smell or distinctly see the effects of the impurities from the previous day on his clothing, his or her clothing, then they will have to wash that part of the body off. But if none of that is visible or smellable or in any way, a person doesn't see it, then it is fine for the person to pray without washing that part of the body fully. However, ideally, what should they do? They should wash it, yes. Stepping on the ground, this is, again, child maybe urinates, etc. You go on a wet foot, or you walk on it without wet foot. If you see the effects of it on your feet, that means a smell, color, or I don't think you should be tasting it, but then you'll have to wash it again. Okay. Key principle number 4: no visible trace, no transfer. Trace means color, smell, or taste. Remember, the QR codes are there, so inshallah, if you do have questions, please send the questions in. We'll look at them inshallah towards the end. All right. Special purification cases. Yesterday I talked about smooth surfaces and talked about, for example, a table, a knife, etc. Anything that's smooth surface does not absorb liquids. They do not need to be washed. They do not need to be washed. You just wiping them clean where no impurity is invisible anymore is good enough for that place to be regarded as pure. Again, a typical example might be you change your baby's diaper on the floor, and some of that excretion fell on the floor, and you have a hardwood, etc. Something that's wipeable. You can wipe it clean as long as, again, those 2-3 things were there. There was no smell, no taste, and no color. You're good to go. That place is regarded as clean. Examples gave smooth swords, mirrors, glass. Another typical example: when a person goes for qurbani and there's blood all over the knife, does he need to typically wash the entire knife off? Ideally, yes. But if he doesn't have, if he takes a piece of cloth and just wipes it completely clean, the knife is now pure. The ground, purified by drying until moisture disappeared, valid for prayer, not for tayammum, right? If, let's say, there is a dog urinates on your yard. So if the dog urinates, at that moment you can use it to make, and that dries up, can you pray over there? You can completely fine for you to pray over there. You have a cat, the cat urinates in the backyard. Few moments later, the sun dries it up. You pray on that exact space. There's nothing wrong. It's completely valid, right? However, if you know the cat urinated over here, you cannot use it for purification. That means tayammum, which we'll also discuss later today, inshallah, right? Dried sperm. This is unique. Time Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this about blood and about sperm. 2 things about blood and sperm. If it dries up in a person's clothing or any other area and it forms a thick layer, what does it form? Thick layer. So all depends on a person, individual to individual. If it soaks into the clothing to the extent that it doesn't have a layer, then you will have to wash it. Then you'll have to wash it just like urine. However, if it forms a layer which you can scrape off or peel off, then a peeling off or scraping off is good enough to regard that clothing or that area to have been for adamun najasa. That means there's no more najasa on it. Obviously, a person will still have to go take a shower for what? For the purpose of removing what we call hadath or greater impurity. Animal products and purity. I don't think this applies to anyone today, so I'm just going to skip over it. Maybe on when you guys do qurbani, there are different methods of dyeing. If you dye or you tan, if you tan that hide, then that is regarded as pure. Pig and human skin cannot be purified. That means it cannot be tanned. which are pig skin. So that is very good. And there are what I became aware of, not recently anymore, a while back, was a lot of our hair brushes that ladies use tend to have pig bristles. And it's very common. It's not uncommon at all. So if you're using a pig bristles and there's pig bristles stuck in your hair, etc. Number one, the usage of any part. This is unique to khinzir, right? And pigs. The usage of any part of a pig is not only is that it's impure, but it's not also not permissible. Also not permissible unless there is a dire need for it. That means there is no alternative to it. Which examples of that has existed historically. But I don't think today we have too much of that. There's always an alternative to most things, right? Shaving brushes also? Oh, shaving brushes as well. I didn't know about that. Okay. Now, the same, yes, so gloves, leather, jackets, everything may be made out of pig leather. So please be careful of that. Soccer balls are made out of pig leather. I don't know that you kick around, so Allah knows best. Anyways, naturally pure after death. Okay, hair and cut feathers. Now, something important to understand, once you have slaughtered an animal, and the hair that falls off or the bones that are there, and horns, claws, all those are pure. Again, doesn't really affect us. Something just for us to know. Core principle of purification. Water is primary. Pure liquids that remove filth also valid. Rose water, vinegar, or for example, nowadays you have different types of chemicals which are of liquid format. If they are used to cleanse your clothing and they do remove the what? They do remove the impurity. They are valid form, materials to be used for cleaning. Transformation purifies. For example, pig, right? We said that all aspects of pig are impermissible and impure. However, if it is burned to crisp and turned into ashes, that ashes is fine. If it touches your body, it is fine. That means the ashes actually, right? Visible traces matter. If color, smell, or taste remains visible, purification is incomplete. I will mention one thing, however. There's sometimes, especially when blood gets on your clothing, right? And certain times when, especially some children urinate, then that color, you like scrub and scrub and scrub, what happens? The effects of the blood just doesn't come off. You have used bleach and used every type of chemical you thought of. In that case, the Sharia does not require us to go over and beyond. You don't have to cut it out. That clothing is permissible to use. It is regarded as pure because you have done the whatever is within your capability to remove the impurity, and you cannot do any more. So once you have exercised every possible avenue for you, do you have to do any more? No, you're good to go. You can wear that clothing. Okay, before we continue, I'm going to ask, with regard to this specifics part, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, inshallah. Carry on, next part. No, might have an issue. All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We're also going to slightly touch on tayammum, inshallah. Tayammum. Tayammum is a very, very easy topic, inshallah, I believe at least. So it's not much to it. Whenever a person does not have water available enough for wudu or ghusl. Remember, wudu or ghusl. So then a person can resort to tayammum. However, in the same manner, if a person is extremely sick, person is bedridden and cannot use water, it's very difficult for him to be moved to area where he can perform the fara'id al-wudu. Remember, if you have enough and you can at least do the fara'id al-wudu, you cannot do tayammum. Why? Because the rest of what is the main core part of the wudu? Remember the 4 cores of wudu. Okay. Everyone. What is the first part? Washing the face. Washing the non-hands, arms up to the arm, including the elbows, and at least 1/4 of the head. Listen, I mentioned one difference of opinion. Who remembers the difference of opinion? Malikis. What do the Malikis say? Full head. They have to. For them, the full head is what? Is fard. Listen, it's necessary. All right. Then what's the next? The 4th core one? We're washing the feet, including ankles. So as long as you have enough water to do these 4, you are required, or you are well enough. You may be very sick, but you're well enough to wash these 4 only. It's necessary for you to do what? Wudu. Yes. So, and otherwise you'll have to do, you are permitted to do tayammum. Rather, you will have to do tayammum, especially for salah. Alright. Tayammum is from, and subhanAllah, this is a fadila. And I want to use this opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been one of the many ways Allah has shown His kindness and mercy to us is through tayammum. Remember yesterday we mentioned salah is a moment in which Allah gives an opportunity, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives His audience. That means He's ready to listen to us. And thus, just as we will look for opportunities to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or talk to someone of significance, or someone that we love, and we would take it as a privilege, not as a right. In the same way, when we pray salah, yes, sometimes our deen has become, we feel it a burden, but that's the wrong mentality. The correct mentality should be that I'm waiting to go, and when will Allah allow me to come? And so when I'm unable to purify myself, or to ready myself to present myself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I should feel, man, how can I get there? And so subhanAllah, every other ummah prior to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, whatever method of purification was given to them, if that was not available, that was it. They just gotta wait. But for us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, number 1, water. If there's no water, then the earth. And subhanAllah, almost nowhere, there are exceptions to the rule. You might be in prison, a glass prison maybe, Allah knows. But otherwise, you will be able to find dust or sand in most places for you to be able to do tayammum, right? So this is an ease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also mentioned that one of the special things that I have been granted is that the entire land of entire earth has been made pure for me. Excuses for tayammum. Distance from water. Being approximately 1.16 miles is called 1 mil shar'i. That 1.16 miles away from the water. About half an hour's walk away. I would say, depending how far, about half an hour's walk away. That now, you have tried. My question is, sometimes you know the water is really far. Then obviously you know that I can't get there. But sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you don't know. Are you obliged to walk for 1 mile? No, you're not obliged to walk for 1 mile. You're not obliged to walk for 1 mile. You will use the best of your capability to assume or to understand that whether there is water within a 1 mile radius or not. Yes? Everyone clear? So, now, most of us in America have cars. Then it's not a really big deal. You just get into a car and go get some water. But I lived in places where that wasn't the case. Or even when there was water, it was water which was so toxic that we were not supposed to touch it. And in those cases, we couldn't do it. I was in another scenario. I was on top of a bridge. What does that mean? Under me is water. There's a river. I'm stuck on top. There's no way for me to get that water, even though I'm sitting right on top of the water. So, and the cars broke down in the middle of the bus. The bus broke down on top of the bridge. On each side, it was approximately 0.75 miles. You had to go across, and then you had to walk back across half a mile because the bridge goes past about quarter mile across. Walk back. We had to make tayammum even though there was water right under us. So situations like that may arise. May Allah protect us from difficulty. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these situations. And recently many people who were hospitalized, who were going through different forms of sickness, they couldn't do wudu and thus or ghusl, and so this tayammum was available to them. Extreme cold is also a reason. Now again, a person may say, hey, it's winter in Texas, so I'm not going to do wudu. Please guys, that's not a valid reason. We have hot water available. You can get out of the blanket. You cannot do tayammum on your dusty blanket. Okay. Sickness or injury. This is something I just talked about. We'll talk about this. Just give us a moment, okay? Environmental dangers, okay? Another thing, if you feel in danger, yes. Oh, I went away. Environmental dangers, fear of thirst, again, things that are not, some of these are something that we may understand because we have experienced it or may not. Okay, enemy or wild beast. Typical example that we may experience, maybe there was a shooting outside in a place, and so in the room, a specific room I'm stuck in, there is no water, and I don't want to leave the room. Why? Because they're shooting outside. Am I absolved of salah? No, rather I would say that is the time to pray salah, because we need the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether to live or even if we don't live, then Allah grants our Jannah, right? Lack of instruments, so I explained, like I was on top of the bridge. Two places where there's time-sensitive prayers, right? Janazah Salah, right? Now, something to understand, Janazah Salah can only be performed once according to Hanafi school of thought. How many times? Once. When is performed in congregation. The only unique situation was the Janazah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I don't know if you guys know, but the Janazah of Rasulullah was not performed in congregation. You guys know that? It was performed 1 to 2 people only at a time. 1 to 2 people only at a time. They would come into the room of Aisha radiallahu anha, because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was passed away in a room. For them to have a congregation in a room was difficult, and the outside would be very, very difficult. So only 1 to 2 people came. Otherwise, according to Hanafi school of thought, I am not aware of the opinions in the other madhabs, it is not permitted to have more than 1 congregational janazah. One exception to the rule. One exception to the rule, that the person who led the Salatul Janazah was unrightful of leading the Salatul Janazah. Who has the most right to lead Salatul Janazah? The Amirul Mu'mineen, which at the moment we do not have. The second person would be the closest family member, male family member of a person. Now, let's say a random person came and led the Salatul Janazah, then that person who is rightful, if he feels, no, I want to repeat the Salatul Janazah, is permitted to do so. Otherwise, only 1 Salatul Janazah. And so, if you miss it once, you have missed it forever. And so because of that situation, if you are about to miss Salatul Janazah because you don't have wudu from before, or while praying Salatul Janazah your wudu broke, you can quickly do tayammum and rejoin the salah or join the salah from the beginning. This also applies to Eid Salah, because now in America we have multiple Eid Salah. So if you miss one, you can always go for the second one. But once the last one is done, then it's over. So if you're in the last Eid, Jama'ah, then you can quickly do tayammum and join the Eid Salah. How to perform tayammum? Like I mentioned, performing tayammum itself is quite simple. There is no extra sunnats to it, etc. There's 4 main things, and you're done. Number 1 is having intention. Remember, tayammum in the Arabic language means intention. What does it mean, guys? Intention. So you cannot, a word which means intention itself, can you do it without intention? No, right? You gotta have intention. Why? Now, why is intention so important? In wudu, according to Hanafi school of thought, was intention a requirement? No. Why? Because if you pour water on my arm, is it getting clean whether I intend for it to get cleaned or not? Yes, it's gonna get clean, right? However, when you look at tayammum, what are you doing? You're taking dust and you're putting it onto your body. And so physically and logically, so to say, you may say, hey, it's not really making sense to me that I'm cleansing myself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the number 1, cleansing over here means purification. And what Allah calls pure is pure. And subhanAllah, something we need to wrap our heads around, right? That every law is set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether in my logic it actually makes sense or not, inshallah. However, if a person looks through in deep logic, sand actually makes perfect sense. Inshallah, some other time, not now, I'll explain to you how earth is possibly one of the best materials to cleanse yourself in the sand after water. Inshallah, some other time. Now, intention. Number 2, striking your hands onto any surface which has dust on it. Now this is very, very important, and I'll explain something the Shafi'is vary from us slightly differently. For us, anything, dust, sand, earth, soil, everything works. Everything works. That means if you have some dust accumulated on some part of some surface on top of your fan, on top of your fan, you can go there. It's good to go. Listen, you can do tayammum with that. The Shafi'is have a little bit of more constraint. We'll say anything from the substance of soil. That means it has to be earthen substance for you to be able to use it. So dust, etc., that gathers in different parts of the body is not usable by them. Completion, okay? And then after that, so that was 2, right? Number 3 and number 4. Once you strike your hands, and then, so now this is something is recommended to, especially if you're outdoor surface, you should dust it off so that there's nothing that can cut you or can cause harm to you. And then number 1, you rub your entire face, just like in wudu, mentioned the entire surface of the face. That means from the tip of from the hairline till below the chin, and from earlobe to earlobe, every part of it has to be rubbed, including your eyelids, etc. Right? After that, how many times? Only once. And according to Hanafi school of thought, whenever you have any type of wipings are only done once. Washings are done thrice. Again, differing with the Shafi'i school of thought, they say wipings also should be done 3 times. Wiping should also be done 3 times. So now going back to the next part, then you take dust again, and this time right hand first. You're going to wipe your right hand first, again covering the entire surface area, and then entire left hand, right? So including between the fingers, etc. And again, they recommend for us you go down with 3 fingers and you come up with the other part of the hand. If you do so, it's good, but it is not necessary for us to go into that pattern, inshallah. So only the face and the arms. Everything else is left as is, and a person can perform salah, right? Again, going through. Yes. Perfect. Yes. Yes. You can carry a brick with you. I think a lot of people tend to carry bricks. Yeah. It has double purpose. Someone attacks you, can hit them back. Metals, okay, important distinctions. Metals, unless they have a layer of dust on them, not usable. Plant matter or wood, this is important. Plant matter or wood, unless they have a layer of dust on them, are not usable. In simple words, anything that you can burn, and actually burn and turn to ashes, cannot be used. Any impure substances, now if you know there's a piece of land, it is dust, it is soil, but as what? A cat just urinated on it, or baby just urinated on it, you cannot use that part of the earth. When a person has, special rulings on wounds and mixed purification, normally under any circumstance you can't do half and half. You can't do half tayammum and half wudu. Listen, if you don't have enough water to do what? Whole wudu, you just do tayammum, right? As simple as that. There's no half and halves. However, listen, if a person is injured and certain part of the area that needs to be washed in wudu is covered, then that part you can just rub your hands over on it. You are permitted to do so. And if you think even that is harmful, listen, then just leave it alone. So you will go with the recommendation of the doctor as what to do, right? Best would be, ideal situation, if it's not going to be harmful, you remove it and you wash it. Listen, if that's not possible, wipe over it. If it's harmful to even touch it with water, leave it alone. Listen. So those are the, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us those leniencies. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about today, inshallah, is Takbirat al-Tahrima, which we moved to really quickly yesterday. Yusuf? Sorry. Just forwarding this to you. Can you just go onto this link? Just go on. No. This is where the questions are coming.
Why is it going there?
Now the link changed.
I was sending a few questions from yesterday, like the scan. The scan isn't working.
No, the scan is working, but for some reason they changed the link.
Or you can't get to the questions.
Yes, I'm sending you this too. So I sent both of them to you.
What is this?
This is where the questions come. So that's a link for what the questions are, and that is a login.
So what do you want me to
Can you just log in on your phone and see if you can send me the questions? You can just post them, give them on WhatsApp, will come on. Sorry, give you extra work. Okay. Yes, one last thing I want to talk about today, inshallah, is we ended off with raising the hands. I think I pretty much covered everything yesterday. So, one thing that I want to emphasize, as that will apply to us in the next few sessions, is inshallah, men and women. Remember, in any aspect, whatever are the reasons for the difference between men and women are based on one aspect. How many aspects? One aspect. And that one aspect is concealment, that we conceal, the woman will conceal themselves as much as possible. So any difference that we'll be talking about in the future will be based on this one aspect, inshallah, for our understanding purposes. Now, a person from the woman's side or from the men's side, anyone questions why is there this difference to begin with, that's a complete different topic that inshallah needs to be addressed at a separate sitting. Inshallah, that it will just take a lot of time from this specific sitting. Also, there was one more question that came in yesterday. I did answer it, but I want to repeat it. Was with regard to if tattoos are not preventive to, what was it? To wudu and ghusl or impurity, why is it haram? Again, I'm going to repeat again that tattoo itself is haram for a completely different reason. It has nothing to do with blocking out impurities, etc. Inshallah, again, a discussion for another place, for another time, inshallah. However, tattoos, if a person has had them for whatever reason, they will not prevent the wudu or ghusl from being valid. Also, takbirat tahrima. So yesterday I mentioned takbirat tahrima. One thing I wanted to add was, when we see the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and any person who has access to any app, any of the dua apps, primarily if you type in Hisnul Muslim in any of the apps, they'll pull it up. They'll have like about quite a few apps. Or if you go into any dua book, which contains multiple duas, you will find that there are a set of duas, approximately 17 of them if I'm remembering correctly. They're authentically transmitted. There are talked about to be read after takbirat tahrima or even before takbirat tahrima. After or before. Some of these different madhahib have picked different ones to be read after takbirat tahrima. The Hanafi madhab, we read Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa tabarak asmuka wa ta'ala jadduka wa la ilaha ghayruk. The Shafi'is dominantly read Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi fatara as-samawati wal arda hanifa wa ma ana minal mushrikeen. All the other du'as, according to Hanafi school of thought, are, I'll address Inni wajjahtu. We the Hanafis say that Inni wajjahtu wajhiya alladhi fatara as-samawat should be recited before takbirat at-tahrima. Before takbirat at-tahrima. So while the imam is what? The muazzin is giving iqama, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to focus my attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the moment I say Allahu Akbar, where should my mind be? Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what does Inni wajjahtu mean? I have turned my attention solely to whom? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has created me, who has created the heavens and earth. Wal arda hanifa wa ma ana min al mushrikeen. I'm not a mushrik. I am not a mushrik. That means in my salah, I am not going to divert my attention to anyone, thinking that na'udhu billah, because they're not worthy of my attention at this very moment. So this is one of the du'as that we as Hanafis, number one, should definitely try to inculcate within our prayers. That means right before takbirat at-tahrima. On the other hand, many of the other du'as which have 17 plus du'as should be du'as we incorporate into our nawafil and sunan salah. So Subhanaka Allahumma, we should make it exclusively for what? For first salah. But all the other du'as can be read where? Nafil and sunnah salats, add on. Why? Because that is the moment we should be connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is something we should remember. I want to address one other aspect. There will be some masajid, less in America, but some parts in America still found. In some parts of the world you'll find that, normally after Imam says Allahu Akbar, and what are you waiting? Everyone reads Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika, and you read A'udhu Billah and Bismillah and Surah Fatiha, right? Remember, in the Maliki madhab, they don't have a thana. There is no A'udhu Billah and there is no Bismillah. So, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, that's how it works. Listen. They have their reasonings for it. This is not the place. We're not debating who's right, who's wrong, what is better. Now, that's not the place of it. That is how the Maliki madhab works. Listen. So if you go to a masjid and Imam does that and you're feeling, man, what kind of Imam this is? To hold your horses before you make a judgment in your mind that this Imam doesn't know what he's doing, inshallah. Inshallah, now I'll ask, Yusuf, did we check, did you have enough water bottles? We have enough water bottles? Yes, inshallah. So I will humbly ask, inshallah, that everyone will be given a water bottle on the men and the women's side, inshallah. We drink about the first quarter of it, inshallah. And if we can drink the entire water and refill it, that would be best. But it might be difficult to finish the entire water bottle that quickly. At least finish the first quarter of it, inshallah. We'll all go outside and try to make wudu with the amount that Rasulullah would make wudu with, inshallah. Tafadhal, bismillah. All right. So ladies in the back, inshallah, Sister Salma is there, and I believe there are a few other sisters who have experience with this. On the brother side, I know there's quite a few brothers who have experience with this, inshallah. They'll also be helping us out, inshallah. Tafadhal, bismillah. Huh? Yeah, no, of course. Yeah.
place where you have to put your shoes is always, same place, and then as soon as you put your shoes, you move on to another thing, so that the message is always clear. Yes. But that's one of the barakallahu fikum. I think we need to do that.
थोड़ा सा पूरा नहीं
I think the focus on this projector is a little bit off. Like you can see this one's a lot clearer. Do you mind if I just stand on the chair and And it's also I noticed yeah, it's tilted as well. Can we stream some text or something so that I can play with the focus and see what's oh yeah. Muftī, where'd you get the PowerPoints from? You said a student? A student made them for you? No, he guided me to what to do. So you made them yourself? Yeah, so I just type up what I want to write. Yeah. What's the program? Gamma? Gamma. Yeah, that's really nice. I just made what I want on each slide, and I tell it. You didn't even did it first? No. They have three versions.
This is the paid version.
$10.
हाँ वही पेड का ही आउटपुट अच्छा है ना फ्री होता था
Because I tried to get ChatGPT to do it for me. It doesn't do it. It can do it. It doesn't. Well, maybe my inputs are wrong. I'm not really good at it.
अभी मंडे को है ना
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday.
मंडे ट्यूसडे वेडनेसडे में अटेंडेंस थोड़ा सा कम होने का चांस है बिकॉज some people might be working जैसे मशहूर है
बहुत सारे लोग will also travel.
that is a possibility too.
अभी 2-3 आए.
अच्छा people did come.
You said that I'm just going to have a recorded version.
Yeah, we have recorded
or
YouTube पे stream हो रहा है ना तो YouTube पे जब स्ट्रीम होता है तो रिकॉर्ड तो हो ही जाता है एक तरह से लेडीज में भी डेमो हुआ था क्या
हाँ I told you that.
ये जो पाउडर है ना है मैंने पर्सन को भेज दिया कि सैमसंग पाउडर वैसे होता है
There was a note, a recent note at the bottom which I had. Huh?
उसमें था वो एड्रेस
Anything that is artificially made. It's not that.
Even if it has ingredients that come from the earth.
No, it comes from the earth.
जैसे talcum powder का जो talc है talc is a rock.
It's similar to Hanafi method example we gave us.
हाँ
वही that's crushed and made and that is the dominant ingredient.
Or if it's that's the major ingredient.
You guys need one? No, it's fine. You done? Yeah.
अगर मेरे पास बहुत बड़ा है I can reach to a place where there is water. मतलब अभी हमारा पता नहीं है.
Permissible knowledge. According to Hanafi method, I don't know what it's
अच्छा ये जो याद है Yeah, just plug it in.